Here we go. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. For those of you tuning in to Who Are These Spiritualists, I am your host, Stacy Schuerman. I am excited to be with our guest today. I got to advantage of meeting him a few years ago, actually. I think we're not going to talk about time. It's an illusion anyways, but we've our paths crossed. I'm always excited to come to you the fourth Sunday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a new spiritualist. And my goal of this program is to introduce you all to different spiritualists around the world who are practicing either the science, philosophy, religion, or all of the above of modern spiritualism. I'm excited to, again, be here tonight. Also excited that our season has kicked off. As you watch this is a pre-recorded program, but because it'll be the fourth Sunday, our season will have just opened and we are in full swing up here in Lilydale. I ask you all to like, share, copy, paste this video along with all the other Lilydale blog radio shows. There are numerous and weekly shows that go throughout the entire year, or sometimes some people do take breaks for the season. And like I said, our season has started. So enough about me. You guys know me. I've been on now for a full year. This is our 1 year anniversary episode. And I'm super excited to have a fellow spiritualist and friend, Joy Sagar. If I'm saying that right. I always fumble that up. I'm sorry, Joy.
That's perfect.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
It's that Midwestern, that A. Like I have a funny accent, so everybody is always,
Sure.
What is that? And I got the pleasure of meeting Joy, like I said, we're not going to count how many years ago, in Florida at our, I always call it the sister camp because it's named after the lake Lilydale's on, Cassadaga. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So Joy, like I said, I got to meet him because we have a mutual friend who we admire tremendously, Marilyn Autry. And if you've heard me talk, her name has come up on shows before. And I was down in that area visiting her and she goes, you have to go to Cassadaga. So we got in the car and we tooled around and the first place she wanted to stop is Joy's house.
I remember that.
Yeah, and we got to meet Joy. And Joy, I know that you're a medium and a teacher, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just in a nutshell, was born, brought, raised in India. In late 2002, I migrated to the United States. And since then, I've been a spiritualist. So it has been many years.
Yeah.
But it just started with that curiosity. But in my academics, I have a bachelor's in business. And then I also have other certifications in computer science and sales and marketing. So I have a diverse background.
Okay.
Is there. But I enjoy just about everything. And my passion is with people for some reason. It is the connection with people. And no matter what I've done, I've enjoyed that part of my journey is how to connect and what to make of it.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful part.
Isn't it? It really is.
Absolutely.
My grandmother always said it takes all kinds to make the world go round. And I said, well, I want to meet all the kinds.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Because that's where the intrigue of the whole thing about the people. Because what we work as on the other side is people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So on your journey, so you come here to the United States, get work. How did you come across spiritualism? Like, how did that kind of find it, you or you it? I'm not sure which one.
So we'll have to just backtrack a little bit. I already was a Reiki master teacher before I got to the United States. And I was also practicing astrology or Eastern Indian astrology. So the family I came into, my mother-in-law at that time, my ex-mother-in-law, she's passed. She said, I know where your kind of people live.
Your kind of people.
And it's funny because I speak about that publicly, but that's just how it was. So they brought me to Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp in Cassadaga, Florida.
Oh my gosh.
And this is within a few months of my arriving to the United States.
Oh my.
So that was an introduction, and I did not attend any services. It was just a visit passing through.
Yeah.
But that was my initiation of where your kind of people live. And I think what it meant was people that practice a certain mindset of healers and psychics and so forth. And that was her version of saying that's your kind of people.
Oh my gosh. I
But
love that.
but that just was the opening. And really, since then, I have been somewhere connected with spiritualism.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because like I said, when I met you, you were serving churches, and so interesting. And I know I might be skipping ahead a little bit on the story. What's so funny is they bring you to the town of your people, and now you live in that town.
that is true. So it is very interesting because that skipping part of the story is
Yeah.
I found myself in one of the message services in Cassadaga camp, just sitting in the back bench, just wanting to see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And I was feeling, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that I'm connected. And that journey from that point to my graduating journey from Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp was nearly 10 years long.
Wow. Yeah.
So I have another facet of that story
Oh,
because
please. Yes. Go for it.
because the program that we have as our coursework is similar to MPI
Oh,
coursework,
sure. Yeah.
but the duration is expected anywhere from 2.5 years to 3 years.
Okay.
So I went through the program. I was just going through all my 6 monthly evaluations and moving up the ladder. And I felt this is the time to play. If I graduate, then I'm labeled as a professional. So
Oh,
somewhere as my listening ear is always active, and somebody said you need to stay in school for long. And then life happens and it stretched into 10-year mark. But what I learned as a student was I can make mistakes. Nobody's going to say much. But
mm-hmm.
that's what you would understand or us would understand. It's a stretching time. You play, you expand your skill set.
Yeah.
But as a student, you have a little bit more patience and allowance from everybody in
I
comparison to when you're a professional. So I listened, and I'm glad that I did because I expanded, I played, I stretched my skill set. Not perfect, not complete, never will be, but that 10 years gave me so much experience.
Yeah.
So
And
when
you bring up I sorry to interrupt, Joy, but you really do bring up a good point to people who, find, because when you find spiritualism, like you were sitting in the back of the circle, just kind of taking it in and feeling a pull or a draw to it. If it almost like is the right word, fascination. Like for me, I remember
absolutely,
I was fascinated by mediumship and healing and spiritualism. So you have this fascination and you're so eager to become part of it
right,
that you try to speed up or, drive through
right.
development. And you bring a really good point by letting that time and that patience kind of soak through and let have life. I mean, we are perpetual students, aren't we,
Right.
of life?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. So tell me then. So let's go back to your student, years here.
Right.
What drew you to spiritualism? Like really the science, the philosophy, the religion, what really kind of was like, wow.
I believe it's all the three facets that we have in spiritualism
Yeah.
because where the religion is the accreditation as a religion in the list of religions. So that's the belief system that we follow. But what really fascinated is the measurement of the scientific thing. So when you do a table tipping, you are witnessing without any strings attached, no pun intended.
Right. I
But
like the fun.
but you see that, and then when you see transfiguration, it's undeniably happening there, right in front of your eyes. So
Yeah.
that's the scientific measurement of what is enjoyable there. But the philosophy has, as you know, in our discussion, philosophy is what drives me. because that's the strongest pillar, because everything else shifts and moves, but philosophy got the best of me. So the natural laws, the spiritual laws, the stories of all the pioneers and how they cope with their sense of prejudice and their own critical assessment from society. So that's a big part for me.
Yeah,
There.
huge,
Yeah.
huge.
And
A couple. Oh, go ahead.
no, I think that's what allowed me to find my passion within this field, was that there was a lot of internal dialogue that happens with this. You cannot be cold to just the process. You
Yeah.
have to be feeling yourself.
Absolutely. And that's the philosophical aspect. You never know who you are. Every morning you wake up a different person than you were yesterday.
Right.
Just to kind of go back, just because I'm sure like our listeners are anywhere from newbies, like people who are like, what is spiritualism? And to seasoned, like, I have been blessed to be able to interview people who are generational spiritualists, right?
Right.
But transfiguration, table tipping, you talked a little bit about that, of the science. What's your definition? And we know table tipping, moving a table I love the no strings attached, because
Right.
again,
Right.
science needs to be analyzed, right? So you have
That's
to
right.
analyze it and classify
Right.
it. But transfiguration, can you tell me a little bit about what that is for you and what you witnessed in that?
So my first experience was in a classroom, and it was more of a demonstration rather than being learning how to do it.
Okay.
So it was a perfect stage of setting up like a seance room with a red light, and then the medium went into the trance to allow us recipient audience to experience who's showing up. And you could tell a square face went to a round face,
Very
and the flat nose became pointed nose. I'm just saying, so those were remarkable differences in that spaces. So that was an inspirational piece, like, oh my goodness, do I have it in me? Because primarily, there's a different version of mediumistic skill set,
absolutely.
which is more of a physical medium aspect than a mental medium aspect.
Yeah.
So part of my version was, can I do it? So I reached out to teachers that were teaching those versions of physical mediumship, and I got to be a part of a series of class where it was all about physical mediumship, ectoplasm, red light trance, sitting in trance, and all that environment. And then when it came to me, when I stepped in as the participant, I could feel the difference in energy, the body temperature, how the little subtle things that you have to pay attention to when you're in that space, because it's surrender most of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you're fighting to maintain the control of how to feel it or what to do or what to manifest. But the learning is still an ongoing thing. So I could feel my cheekbones change, or broken cheekbone that went in there in that experience. So it
Amazing.
was very fascinating to witness it and then experience it. Different feeling, but it
Yeah.
was wonderful.
Amazing. And like Joy said in the question I asked, philosophy is what binds us, natural spiritual laws. We talk about them all the time. And I do have to say, you serve many churches, and there's a lot. I looked you up on YouTube. I mean, you can find you. And I would strongly suggest to our listeners that you listen to some of Joy's lectures, talks, sermons, whatever you want to call them, because they do predominantly come from that philosophical aspect, which is that self-work, that making ourselves better tomorrow than we are today by learning, by knowledge, by experience. So definitely check that out.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I want to go on to my next question, because you kind of brought it up. I know I three parts: your transfiguration, your philosophy, but you also talked about one of my favorite things is the history of spiritualism, the movement, why it has come to be what it is. Is there any past pioneers or historic points that you look at that inspire you?
There's so many
I know.
now, but in the theory of rooting for the underdog.
I love
So
this.
I just presented that way because pioneers are we all get to read about the leading figures. Emma Hardinge Britton is there. There's all Olga Woodall is there. So there are
Yeah.
so many people that have been written about and published about. But then there are people that uphold the movement. Those are the pioneers too. Like
Mhm.
I love the story of Mr. and Mrs. Post because they were big, strong supporters through such a tumultuous time for the Fox sisters. So,
Absolutely.
how do we say that they are not just as good as the pioneers itself? But if we are talking about purely about pioneers, for me, I feel the healers speak out to me more than the mediums itself. Like Harry Edwards is for me is the most inspiring
Yeah.
pioneer of spiritualist healer there was because he is just such a well scientifically studied and demonstrating healer. The part of my that healing pioneer, he stands out for me the most. Is there the other one that stands for me the most is which is not technically a spiritualist but spiritist, Alan Kardec from France.
Yeah.
I think the reason I enjoy his story is because it is very well documented of what he put himself through trusting the spirit.
Hmm. And that's the big one, right? That
Yes,
trust. Yeah.
absolutely. And what I would say here, Stacy, is when I was getting graduating through my certification, I did not know about Alan Kardec up until that 10 years time period. I learned about him later on. And what my really emotional place was where my heart was in this journey.
Mm.
Because my thing was I'm not here to because I have a skill that I'm in spiritualism because of that skill.
Yeah.
So my constant even today is the measurement is my heart is in the right place. So that part is what drives me to the philosophy and the understanding of it. And that Alan Kardec's movement shows is if spirit is leading my way, then I will follow it.
Yeah.
And that's the part is I continue to battle that for a couple of years. Like what am I here for? And it was the demonstrating part of the work is gracefully a valid part of our lives,
Yeah.
but is my heart is in the right place? Am I doing it for the pocketbook or if I doing it for my spiritual pocketbook? And
Oof.
that's the part for me. I just find those few people they didn't care. They did it for the spirit. They did
Yeah.
it for the other side.
Yeah. And there's so much there that we can just like go and talk about too, because you're exactly right. You might be able to list a dozen or even 2-3 dozen of pioneers, forerunners that we talk about, but there's hundreds of thousands of practicing mediums, teachers, healers, and people forget healing is mediumship. Healing is
Absolutely.
it's and it was a really big part of our movement, and for a
Mhm.
while it kind of has disappeared a little bit, but I feel like it's making a resurgence. I think more people, once you receive that evidential message that basically proves you don't die,
Right.
because you go see a medium, you get a message that knocks your socks off, right? Information comes through from the spirit world that no one would know. You can't Google search,
Right.
all of that. And then after that, it it should, for me, and I'm sure for you, it moved me into well, then what is my purpose? If my soul is everlasting, whatever that looks like,
Right.
what can I do now? And that brings in the philosophy, but it also brings in that healing aspect, both physical, emotional, mental, like all of that is so profound. So
Ab-
profound.
Absolutely. And once again, to those that practice and those that are doing the work, they have to recognize that within themselves too, where
Yeah,
that movement is. So, you know, I feel I need to just kind of go half a step back if I have the permission.
absolutely.
In pioneers, I also feel I know a few living pioneers too that are
Mhm.
doing their work because they are pioneers. They're doing the work. And I
Yes.
had the pleasure of meeting one pioneer. Two of them have crossed over. Mavis Patella is one of them.
Yeah. Ooh,
Absolutely. So the story about Mavis is I met her in Lilydale in 2014
okay.
when we were having the World Congress of Spiritualists. That
Yeah.
was my first visit to Lilydale in 2014. I met her there, and we just kind of formed our lifelong bond. And we enjoyed that company, but I consider her to be one of my mentors. We never established a formal mentorship, but I have been inspired and learning from her. Is in there.
Wonderful.
And right in that fold, I also got to meet Janet Nohavik.
Yeah.
And I call her that both these ladies are pioneers. Janet was an advocate. She was an activist for spiritualism. And
Yeah.
her inspiration to me was not only just her demonstrating abilities, but her passion for spiritualism to go to the next level. And
Yeah.
then our common friend, Marilyn Autry, she
Yep.
is a pioneer in her own true nature, and she's still plugging along in her own version of it. But we do have so many leading pioneers, that we're becoming pioneers of the coming generation.
Yeah,
And it's a
absolutely.
responsible place.
Yeah.
What are we going to leave behind is a big responsible question.
It is. It's a huge question. And, I think I'm going to go with some of your advice from Alan. I'm going to just make sure that I'm always working from that place in my heart, and doing it for the right reasons. I had the pleasure of knowing all three of those women too, both in the physical. And you're absolutely right. We don't. I think it's great that we are starting to recognize more and more that, for a movement, to continue to be a movement, right? There
Right,
always
absolutely.
has to be energy feeding it. And that energy, the souls of the earth and the souls of the spirit are co-working together to continue the forward movement.
Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
that is super cool. So then that kind of segues me into, like, if we have our pioneers and the thing in common with them, and I think it's so important, people. I say this all the time. It's so important to know the history of the movement. I mean, because then it for me it helped carve out, okay, what do I want to do? Like, don't try to do everything, right?
Right.
Do one thing and do it great, or do two things and do it wonderful.
Mhm.
Don't try to do everything. So for me, the movement, learning the history of the movement helps kind of direct you on which way to go. I mean, in now you've graduated and you're, a working, demonstrating medium speaker. What do you like to do the most? I know you said healing was really important to you. What are you doing currently in your mediumship practice?
But currently, as a practicing medium, I am practicing like mental mediumship and the works that goes with it, and the healing as it goes along with that. And so that being said, I'm just trying to sort out where that is. But
Yeah.
what I'm enjoying in this version of my journey with spiritualism is the recognition of that spiritualism is a self-inquiry work. It's a version of self-inquiry.
Beautiful.
And if you miss it, then you miss the whole point. It's a big thing. So
True.
what am I practicing? Spiritualism has opened my awareness to how close I am to that self-inquiry spaces all the time.
Yeah.
And that you would understand the law of interconnectedness. The people that we are working as a client are not much far from that space. So it has become that little space of aha for over the last few months is, oh, well, it's kind of, in a way, it simplifies the work, but it's not an easy work.
Yeah.
Spiritual work is never an easy work. So
No.
my sense within that is, so what I'm working right now is to work sincerely. Like you were saying, you've identified the discarnate spirit, but what is beyond that point? The other
Yeah.
person has their journey to work with, and the part is to lead them to a place, but not tell them what to do.
Oh, right there,
That's a
right?
challenge sometimes, but at the same time, it's an observation of me within my own journey to how I am responding to that. Spiritualism is all about self inquiry. It's about our own soul's progression.
Yeah, I love that self inquiry and the law of interconnectedness. And we forget that a lot. It's very easily,
Right.
I don't want to say forgotten, but really that's what it feels like. You get so engrossed in, either your problem or this situation that you forget there's all these other little strings of connection
Right.
that
Absolutely.
and even that law of attract. You're right, Joy, because I too, we have practice, right? We practice it.
Right.
We're living our religions, and very often I find clients or friends going through some of the same things I'm going through, and I'm like, oh, yeah, all right.
But that's where the aha is there, then to separate of that transfer and counter transference is like to be able to observe it. Now I will add at this point is what spiritualism has also taught me is to separate from a sense of judgment versus sense of assessment. And that's critical sometimes, as such, like it punches me in my gut sometimes. But part of that is how to observe things only as an observer rather than become critical about it. And that's just is just does something within my own soul evolution or my own sense.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing because it's an interesting place.
You have me. I'm kind of like, because I am still digesting the judgment from assessment. Like, oh, yes, I want to assess things. I don't want to judge them. I don't want to. That's deep. Like, I have to think about that now. Like, I'm kind of like, wow, that's something we really need to work on.
It's like what the golden rule: do unto others as others should do unto you. So, and
Yep.
I'm once again, I'm also a work in progress. I don't have any mastery or anything, but it's a gentle reminder is as soon as you touch upon that little fringe spaces,
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, I'm here.
So what would you recommend for somebody who's like one of our listeners? They come from all over. And I know that a lot of times, especially when you're first starting out, you might not live by a town of your people.
Right, right.
You might really have to explore through education. Some of that can be books or videos or whatever. Is there any recommendations you have of like a book or something that you have read that has helped you in this self-discovery into spiritualism?
I don't know. I don't know. And the reason for that is because it's such a unique pathway. Not everything works for
That's true.
everybody.
That's
It's
true.
it's your own DNA. The way it unfolds. It's just as complicated and simple at the same time. So telling somebody to read this or take that or do this. So spiritualism, other interchangeable word is self-exploration. So you figure it out. That's the part of the self-inquiry is you go figure it out for yourself. But what I will say is if you can accept your weirdness at the onset,
Hmm.
then you don't have to fight with anything for the remainder of your journey.
Oh, I love that.
You're different, and that's about all it is, the end of story. And then you develop on your version of weirdness and master it or fine tune that skill.
I love that. I
So
love that.
even, you would understand you've seen so many mediums through your life.
Yep.
Everybody's expression is unique to their own makeup.
Absolutely. And the worst thing you can do not get me wrong what I'm about to say, because like there are people I admire, our
Right?
mentors, our teachers. We even emulate some of them, right? Like
Mhm.
I remember one of the first classes of mediumship development, especially public demonstration I took was Janet Nohovac, right? And again, she has this saying, like, there's things that she does and you learn from your teachers. So there's maybe this sense of, like trying to be like, but you really have to be your own medium because you have your own connection to spirit. So by all means, go to teachers and learn. But I love what you said, embrace your weirdness, your uniqueness right away, because then that way it just helps in the development.
Right. But there's a caveat to it.
Okay, I love it. Bring it on.
See, because the weirdness makes us individual sparkles, right? Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But to be a part of a sense of a movement, you have to understand what is your strong suit, what you can contribute to the movement.
Yeah.
You cannot, we cannot say that this is what I believe, so this becomes a movement in its own self.
Yeah.
So spiritualism is a movement, so the alignment within that movement has to be equally shared with everybody.
Yeah.
Yet you can retain your uniqueness.
Yes.
You had to somewhere come to a convergence point so that the movement becomes strong rather than feels more bifurcated.
Yeah. So that's a great segue into this question I want to ask is where do you see the spiritualist movement progressing?
Well, Emma Harding said spiritualism at some point will be known by many names. I think we're experiencing that. She made that prophecy a long time ago.
Yeah, she
And it
did.
has been many times reminded by other people to me, the same words of Emma Harding's. But this is my analogy here, and I think this is kind of me believing in what I believe. You're in a food business at the Sacred Grounds coffee shop.
Yeah.
So the fresh pot of coffee is strong, but if you add more water to it, it gets diluted.
That's
Or
true.
if you leave it on the shelf for too long, then it loses its
Yeah.
essence.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel about our movement of spiritualism is we have to learn to know to hold the grain of strain that feeds perpetually.
Yeah.
Because if we keep adding, or once again, the exploration is we're exploring different streams of consciousness within this bigger stream of consciousness, perhaps because that's where our or a individual's conscious level is. Somebody's more, somebody's low, somebody, but we are all in our own path.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I feel for spiritualism is we have to have some core that needs to feed itself. So it's almost like, one of those quantum loops that feeds itself.
Yes. Yes.
And that has to be recognized that it's perpetual. It is not linear, it is perpetual.
Absolutely.
Because my sense is spiritualism has so much more to touch upon and explore and discover the potential of human psyche, human soul, and so much more beyond that. Yet it has to understand the dynamic between the worlds within the worlds and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's not one answer for that. I don't think any one of us can define that.
No, I don't think so either.
But it's almost like how do you make the nice batch of bread because you still have that first germinating strain still continuing in some fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some food or coffee for thought. I love that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joy.
exactly.
Oh, so Joy, tell me a little bit about you, what you're doing, where people can find you. Like, I know you're in Cassadaga, Florida, which is a camp, well, I don't know if it's a camp, a community, just like Lilydale here. We have I always think, for some reason, I always love to put us as sisters or brothers or just, in the same family because there was so many, you're coming up here to teach this year.
My casual version of explaining that is the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association is a offshoot of Lilydale, Lilydale, and the reason is they needed a place to escape in the winter time, so they started here.
Yes.
And when it got hot here, they went back, and slowly, through process of life and aging, some found it more comfortable here, so it became a year-long structure. So that being said, in December we celebrate our 130 years as our presence in the spiritualist community.
Oh my gosh.
So that is we are looking forward to that. So since that long, we have been serving pretty much through the values of spiritualism, precepts, and all the context of it. So I have my credentials from here, so I practice from Cassadaga. But my also passion is through that philosophy and speaking. So I do go to several churches in Central Florida. I also work in other states, is in there, and I am fortunately visiting Lilydale this season. In August 4th and 5th, I have two events planned in the morning hours, and one of them is What's on the Other Side.
Oof.
So that's about death, dying, and everything beyond. So that's an interesting place. So those things are what's in the work. I do have a presence on the internet through joyofcassadaga.com.
Okay, great.
Also looking at the hashtag below, you can find this hashtag. This hashtag will lead you more than spiritualism, because photography is another passion of mine, to capture
Love that.
nature and candid moments and so forth. So it's the
Perfect.
unfoldment, I think, is always enjoying place for me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And for our listeners tuning in now, you can see he's a traveling up the coast. So make sure to I can't wait to see you anyways back in August.
Yes,
And so
I'll be,
in December, you said though. So like we should all come down by you in December.
absolutely. Yeah, we are putting the thoughts together to see how we're going to celebrate it. It's a big year for us. So
Great.
definitely there's going to be something coming up on the horizon for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Joy, I can't thank you enough for being here with me this evening or this afternoon. Again, pre-recorded show. So
Yes.
if you guys are commenting, we will look at the comments, but don't feel like we're ignoring you. It's just a pre-recorded show. So we always try to answer the comments. Again, you know how to find Joy. You can look at his hashtag, his website, come to Lilydale, go to Cassadaga. And numerous other churches and camps you serve too. You're up and down, around
Yeah,
and around.
I am, and it would be a pleasure to run into the audience that is following and looking forward to that connection.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for being with us. I remind you that this is Who Are These Spiritualists with your host, Stacy Schuerman. That can be found live streamed, pre-recorded live streamed the fourth Sunday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern. I also love to remind you of all of the other mediums and spiritualists who have radio and podcast shows. It streams to either Facebook, or now we have a YouTube channel. So please go onto that channel and subscribe. You'll see our other hosts, Celeste Elliott, Kathleen Bolt, Tiffany Hopkins, Nancy Lombardo, Willa White, Colleen. I know I'm probably missing even a couple more. I should always have a list by the desk, but they are here, and we are happy that you joined us. And thank you. And stay tuned for next month's Who Are These Spiritualists? Joy, again, thank you, my friend. This has been
Likewise.
wonderful.